Okay, everybody, I guess we're going to get started. And first of all, I'd like to thank you all for attending our webinar. By the way, this is Bob Coppedge, CEO, Grand Poobah, whatever, of Simplex-IT, and we're talking about stealing your Office 365 credentials. And we're basically just going to walk through one of the more imaginative methods we've seen some of the bad guys come up with lately, and try to reinforce why we think it's so critical, especially end user training and the like. So, as always, we have muted everybody's microphones, but we do ask for any feedback by chatting using the chat conversation window. And please, if you have questions, raise them. If you have comments, criticism, anything, I'm not proud, because I already know this stuff. So. Please join in. And also, I'd love some feedback. We're doing this is a little bit different webinar than we've done in the past, in that we're really talking about something, instead of saying from on high, this is how the security. We're really talking about some specific examples, because we've just run into a number of instances where organizations or individuals don't realize how the threats actually work. So it's a little bit of a difference for us, and based on the number of people we've got both online and how many people reserve for it, we think this is of interest. So anyway, enough of that silliness. So for those of you who don't know, we love to put up logos on a slide, and that's an example of it. We do the managed services as both with organizations that have existing IT departments. We call that commits, as well as we're the fully. One of the things I want to point out, the Simplex TM, the training we're doing, if you take a look at the simplex-tm.com, we actually have a free Windows 10 online course available. It's about an hour and a half. It's online, teach people from an end user perspective some of the ins and outs of Windows 10. So enough of that. Yes, I wrote a book. It's out there. Isn't that wonderful? CEO's Survival Guide to Information Technology. Yay. A couple things we've got coming up soon. One, July 11th. This is a biggie. We're actually doing one of our lunchinars here in Stowe, Ohio, and we're partnering this with Sophos, who's our primary cybersecurity, and we're really going to go over what entails a good cybersecurity strategy. A lot of it is going to be non-vendor specific, but then we'll also dive into a little bit some of the tools that we use. So as always, there will be food, and then we've got a couple of webinars coming up. And the next one on July 24th will kind of be like this. We're going to be talking about exploits. And an exploit is a discovered vulnerability of a product or a software or a service, and we're going to walk through how both the bad guys, once the exploit is discovered, how the bad guys try to come up with ways to take advantage of it, and how the good guys try to come up with ways to close it. So I think that it kind of falls in line with what we're doing here. So that's coming up as well. So moving on. The one thing, whenever I talk with cybersecurity, or talk about cybersecurity to anybody, really, the one thing I want to talk about is, before we get into any technology, is how significant this is, and how it matters, and how it matters in a much more dramatic way than it did 4 or 5 years ago. Really, it's ransomware that caused this. But here's some information from the FBI, and I want you to take a look at the rate of total complaints, and mind you, these are the total reported complaints to the FBI, so the number is significantly larger. But if you look from 2012, I just got a comment, we have no audio. Is anybody else having the problem? Can people hear me? Okay, I hear some people can hear you. Barb, but thank you very much for pointing that out. Let me post something real quick. So here's what you can do. Yep, there is. If you're having trouble, you can call this number and use that conference ID. I apologize for that. So go ahead and call that number and then use the conference. I should also point out that we will be recording this and putting it up on YouTube within the next few days. So unfortunately, I'm gonna push on a little bit. Uh, so the one thing I wanted to point out here, though, is the increase in total complaints from 2012 to 2016 is relatively light. It only went up by about 10,000. It's still 300,000. It's still a lot. But look at the money. The money from 2012 to 2016 tripled. This has become significantly more of a financial burden than it used to be. And one of the big puppies for this, one of the big reasons for this is ransomware. The bad guys have found out a way to make it pay. And what this did, more than anything else, and this is why I keep getting back to this over and over and over again, is that prior to this, prior to ransomware and this being, it basically was a bunch of jerks, or it was very focused. So if all the malware did was cause damage or cause problems, haha, that's funny, but there's not money being made out of it. Now, and here's some additional credentials or statistics, and we're not going to go through all of these details. But so everybody's getting into it because now we found a way to make it pay. So right now we've got well-financed, which we didn't have before, well incentivized actors who are becoming interested in coming up with new ways to basically do bad things. And whether, as you look at this list, whether we're talking about nations or organized crime, whatever, and a lot of these are happening in countries that actively endorse and protect them. So you truly have, and I've seen pictures of it, there's some really good FBI presentations, where they're literally showing your brick and mortar, here's an office building. And oh, by the way, on the third floor, there is a Hackers R Us office that has a bunch of well-paid, well-meaning employees whose job it is to write malware, and they get paid for it, and they have a company newsletter, they go on company picnics. It's an entrepreneurial world, which is very, very different. And here's one of the things that, and this kind of starts tying into our topic, the human factor. There is not only a race going on between developing better and better technical tools, better and better antivirus, better and better malware protection, better and better firewalls, better and better unified threat management devices, better and better blah, 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 blah. But there's also a race going on, fooling users into unwittingly cooperate. And coming up with better and better websites that look more and more convincing, better and better appeals. And at the same time, we're trying, but we're not doing a very good job of it, of educating users, don't do that. And this is really what we're talking about here. And one of the other things I want to talk about real briefly is that don't forget mobile. And this is just a chart from January to September 2017 of malware that was discovered in Google Play. As you can see, there's a whole ton, including my favorite, Flashlight. There's something about installing an application that's just supposed to be a freaking flashlight that it then asks, hey, can I have access to your data, to your passwords, to your pictures, to your network traffic? And people say, yes, of course you can. That's great. So, and then again, how are credentials compromised? Whether it be phishing, which is really what we're going to be talking about here, but there's also malvertising, where where the bad guys actually put malware code that's causing damage onto websites. Watering holes, web attacks. We're really going to be focusing on the phishing side. And then once the bad guy has compromised credentials, they can do a whole bunch of things. Okay. Why are the bad guys doing it? Here's a good list. They're getting ransomware. They're getting money through trickery. We've seen multiple occasions where companies have inadvertently wired money to bad actors because they thought they were transferring it to the quote-unquote good guys. Blackmail, credentials, all that kind of fun stuff. And then phishing. We're going to talk about this specifically. We're just trying to get into sharing credentials. And again, this example, Bob at simplex-it.com, Bob at simplex-1t.com. And it really, is there any training in place as far as for your employees to recognize the difference? So, what we're going to talk about specifically is Office 365. However, any service that relies on a user logging in with credentials is at risk for this. So, Dropbox, Salesforce, your Amazon accounts, any of these kind of fun stuff. The way the bad guys use the credentials may be different, but the risk is still there. It's real simple. The bad guys send an email. Somehow they get your email address. And they can get your email address as in you're one of 50,000, or they can get your email address very specifically because they've targeted your company. Every time your company puts out press releases that have contact information, every time your company goes and supports something, or somebody else gets hacked and they have your contact information, that makes your contact information available. So this is it. You click on the link, you provide your credentials, you're done. You've done the deed. So let's take a look at a couple of examples. So what the bad guys do is, and we talk about the form of an email, and it's well formed. So here's a couple of examples that are sent out that we've seen. And it says, it's Microsoft Outlook, your mail is 99% full. Ooh, don't want that. This message was sent to Bob at Simplex-IT because your 365 mail is 99% full, yada, yada, yada. And look at this. Once we notify you about this to help you regain your access, clean up mail. So we've got these links that we can go to. And if we take a look at the no reply security accounts, MicrosoftOnline.com. Now, I don't want to go through the whole, obviously this is a fake. There are certain aspects of it that are, to say the least, questionable. We notify you about this, comma, to help okay, that's not the best of English. Once your mail is full, so this looks like it's not the best termed, and that's okay. Some of them are better than others, some of them are worse than others. And it just so happened that since I decided to put on this topic, I've been waiting for some really well-formed mail that I could use as examples, and of course I haven't gotten any except for this stuff. And also we look at the reply. This kind of looks maybe okay, but this is the key thing, is what is the domain? Accounts MicrosoftOnline.com, that just sounds weird. And then here's the same thing. Your mailbox failed to sync and return 5 incoming mails. Syncing failed, invalidation, view failed emails. So in both cases, these guys are coming up with their fear messages. They're coming up with email that if you don't do something, something bad will happen. You will lose access to your email. You will lose access to email that is being sent to you. So as a good employee, because after all, you want to be productive and all of that, you're going to click on these. Now, the training aspect of this, that we go back to end users, is don't. If there's ever a question on clicking on something that you don't know, then don't. If there's a possibility, don't. But it could look, don't. And contact whoever your IT support is to have them verify, because worst case scenario, you delay solving the problem by the time it takes for that person to go, oh no, yeah, we sent that out, that is legit. Okay, now here's the problem with this. There's nothing wrong with these emails. All the emails, if you're looking for antivirus to protect you, antivirus looks at attachments. It looks at programs that are running on your computer. Well, these are just emails with links. So antivirus software isn't going to protect you from this. Okay, what about malware? Well, there's really no program here. It's just a link to a website. So none of the actual program or application is being run on your computer, or for that matter, on your network. So traditional antivirus or endpoint and traditional malware protection are not going to catch this. Okay, and we'll get to what will later. So we'll talk about the solutions. But the bad guys are writing more and more of these emails, and they're making them look better and better and more compelling. So they're coming out with Microsoft logos. They're using the same fonts, the same visibility that the vendors are using. And these could, like I say, this could be just as well a Salesforce email or a Dropbox email or anything along those lines. So the link simply asks for credentials, because your mailbox is 99% full. Give us permission to fix it. Your email is blocking things. Give us activation permission so that we can clean it up. We can do whatever. So the link simply asks for your credentials, and guess what? It's not even going to test them 9 out of 10. So if you put in your Office 365 credentials and then click on Next, and this is a screenshot, and then you put in, here's my email address, and then click Next. Here's my password. Click Next. It's going to say, thank you, you've cleaned it up. Or however they put it. So at the end of this, they now have your credentials. Okay. So there's no malware on this site because it's literally just asking for 2 fields. So your firewall and your web blockers aren't going to block access to the site unless the site's already been identified as a malware, as a bad guy, by web filtering. Like we use Sophos Cloud Filtering. We also have Umbrella through Cisco. Other tools, SonicWall has it, whatever. And most of them maintain up-to-the-date databases that contain known malware sites. If they have discovered that, it'll be blocked. If they haven't, and remember, the bad guys are just as incentivized, so the bad guys are constantly changing to new web servers, new web hosts. So depending upon whether you're getting in on early or later on, your web blocking might not block it as well. So in this particular instance, the user who clicked on that link and who gave the 365 credentials, technically nothing has happened yet. But the bad guys now have the credentials. Now, the bad guys don't have direct access to your computer. They never wanted it. But Office 365 and so many cloud-based services, all of their services, all of their data, all of the juicy stuff is in the cloud. Basically, servers that are manned and serviced and maintained and managed by Microsoft in this case. Now the guys have the credentials for your, assuming you're the one who did this, for your email account and whatever else you have access to. So if it's Office 365, it could be your OneDrive for business, your SharePoint Online, your email, your contacts, all of that kind of fun stuff. And they can pretty much log on and do whatever they want to. They can, and there is ransomware for Office 365 or for Dropbox or for, so it would actually encrypt your data there and force you to pay a ransom in order to decrypt that. Okay, so ransomware is not just for PCs or desktops or servers anymore. It's now for cloud data as well. That's relatively new. They can also collect your contacts. So now they've got verified contact information that they can use. They can delete your data. That if they delete it on the cloud, then usually it synchronizes back with the computer that you've got. And this is the cool one, turns your account into a spam machine. None of those actions require them to touch your computer or any device that you own. They do it in the cloud, and they do it without connecting to any of your devices. So here's the kind of popular. So once the bad guys have your credentials, then they do this. They do this up in the cloud, so you're never seeing it. They will create an email that's from you telling recipients to click on a link. And this is, please review this contract, please approve this, hey, this is cool. That's malware. That link that they're sending out, that will do the ransomware. And here's the fun part. Everybody in your contact list, they then do this through rules, is they will send that email to everybody in your contact list, and it will pass a good chunk of firewalls and mail filters because it truly is coming from you. It is absolutely, legitimately, no question about it, coming from your Office 365 account. And then what it does, and this is the beauty of it, through, again, rules that are in the cloud that they create, it will then delete those emails out of your sent items folder and then out of the deleted items folder so you don't see them. So if you have 500 email or 500 people in your contacts, it will send out 500 of these emails. It will then delete those 500 emails out of the sent items folder, and it will then delete those 500 emails out of the deleted items folder. So you on your computer, you don't see any of those emails go out. If anyone replies to those emails with, "Why did you send me this? This is weird. Should I click on it?" The bad guys have rules that look for those emails and delete those. So you never see people replying going, "I don't know why you sent me this. I guess I'll click on it." And this can go on forever. They can also read through your inbox and gather all of the email addresses that are in your inbox or your sent items or your deleted items, whatever, but they're not in your contacts folder, and do the same thing to them. Why? Because they've got full access to all your 365 data. And what ends up happening is you think everything's great. And someone says, "Hey, someone sent an email," or someone sent an email proposing to be you. Yeah, that's a good point. And yeah, as Ann said, they can also change where your inbound messages come from, and they reply as you. If they want to be, depending upon how they want to do it, whether they want to do it just automated so it's all bots doing it, or they can have humans involved, they can actually be very creative with their replies. But again, once they do the replies, they then delete all the trash. So they delete all the pieces, parts, so you don't see it. So they can be as human and as aggressive and as imaginative as they want to. So thanks, Ann. Yeah, it's a good point. You don't see this. These rules are in the cloud. They're not running on your computer. Your computer is showing no inappropriate behavior whatsoever. And this is just a recent trick or tool that the bad guys are coming up with. So how do you find out about it? I hate to say it. You find out because people call. Or people just send an email that's not a reply, doesn't have whatever the bad guys are searching for. And if somebody says, "Well, it's not me," okay, someone must have just, how you can change whoever you're sending as, but it's a fake. Someone says, "Oh yeah, it must be somebody sending it as me." No, they're actually sending it, and they are you. So what you do then is you take a look at the rules, both on your computer as well as in the cloud. You see, look at these rules, they shouldn't be there, and you clean them up. Now the problem is sometimes companies have, like I have a number of rules that I use automatically for propagating. So if emails are sent with this topic or from these people, it goes to these folders. So some rules are great. They're absolutely fantastic. And that's why antivirus is not going to do great, plus the fact that they're not running on your computer. Okay? And again, we've seen this. This is the one that's been the most creative that we've seen recently. There's also the encryption, the ransomware versions, as well as just deleting data. How do we protect? There's three things that come to mind right out of the gate. Number one is training. And we offer a training program for companies that has about an hour and a half or so online training with classes or with tests and quizzes specifically about end user cybersecurity, and then every week it gets updated with another video or two about what the latest things are. We offer that. Honestly, there's a ton of companies who are offering some type of cybersecurity training. The one thing, though, is if you don't do it, your employees are not going to be trained. And if you do it with the, "Hi, we're going to train you today," 6 months from now, these new threats are going to be out there and people aren't going to know that they're there. There are some folks, I know Chris, you do it, that are actually have luncheon hours with employees on occasion to reinforce it. Absolutely believer in those. The second is two-factor authentication. And this is becoming more and more prevalent. Probably about 50% of the stuff that we do here at Simplex-IT has at least two-factor authentication. And that's where when you log in, there's an additional step, whether it be they text something to the person, so they have to have their mobile phone there, or there's an app involved or whatever, but simply having the account name and the password isn't sufficient to get access to it. You need another level of authentication. I will say two-factor authentication is often overstated as far as its effectiveness goes. There are ways to bypass that. However, it's much better than just having one factor or single factor authentication. And also enhanced Office 365 security has some additional, because one of the things we're starting to take a look at more and more frequently and more closely is behavior. And what I mean by that is to look at the behavior of systems and processes, and when the systems and processes start doing weird things, to take action. And Microsoft has some enhanced Office 365 security options there, which will protect against some of this kind of stuff, but not all. Not all. And really the key point on this is that you've got four pillars of a cybersecurity strategy, and people are a huge one. If there's one takeaway on this, it is get people trained. You should have some kind of training that can be an onboarding for personnel. It is ridiculous how inexpensive this is. And also, if you're looking to get any kind of cyber insurance will often give a discount of some kind if you have an organized training, cybersecurity training policy or program in place. So. And the high points on all this is when we're talking about cybersecurity, the bad guys just have to find one way in. That's all. And if your services or devices aren't configured properly, it's just like having a door with a really, really fancy lock that somebody put a wedge in so the door doesn't close. So, and it doesn't ever end. And then one last point: backups, backups, backups. Backups are the final solution for all problems IT oriented. Okay, no matter what the problem is, your final solution after all else fails is going to be your backup. If you don't have your data backed up, you have a vulnerability. And if you have not tested or managed or monitored those backups, then you hope you have backups. I can't tell you how often, probably about 30%, about a third of companies who we're brought in to talk to about helping them with their IT support, where we find serious omissions of backup strategies, and often where, well, we thought it was backed up, but it wasn't, and it was never tested. And one of the key things is Office 365, and same thing with Google and a lot of the other guys, their data is not backed up. Not in the traditional sense. They back it up so that they can recover in case they have service outages or equipment outages. They do not back up stuff in terms of you recovering data in these types of scenarios. So read your content. Now there are services that will do it, and there are services provided by Microsoft that will do it, as well as third parties. But do not assume automatically that your data is going to be backed up in the traditional sense. It more than likely is not. So, and honestly, this is wild. We're actually right on time. That is pretty much our topic for today. Like I say, if you have any questions, you want to do a cybersecurity review, that includes a dark web scan that'll show whether or not any credentials associated with your email domain have shown up on the dark web over the past couple of years, and get you a free copy of my book. Yay! Finally, you'll have something to level out that table that's been rocking back and forth. So email me at bob@simplex-it.com if you're interested. Plus, again, Love to hear some feedback, whether this is worthwhile. Love to hear about suggestions of different topics and all of that. So, any questions? And I am hearing or seeing no. Okay, um, then that is it. And no, you're welcome, Brian. Thank you. And thanks everybody for joining us. And hope to see you in the future. Take care. Bye.